Hello, welcome. I'll be super brief because the session is going to start here in a few, but I want to invite you behind the screen so you can see what I've felt are the top 10 classes for roleplay potential in D&D. Might be a bit of a hot take. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below. First and foremost, and this isn't necessarily in particular order, just the order I found them. First and foremost, Echo Knight Fighter. What's interesting here is that your shadow is literally animate. It can do things. You can have it manipulate and become corporeal and interact with the world around it. What I love about that is that's not a typical power you find in D&D. And so that then begs the question, how did they get it? How did the player obtain that power? I feel like that's something that ought to be written into the backstory. Outside that, the second one that I came up with is the Path of the Wild Magic Barbarian. Again, similar questions can be asked that ought to be asked to refine that roleplay. How do they feel about the power that they have when they get angry, strange magical phenomena occurs? Do they know what happened? Was it a result of magical testing or something they're aware of? Or is it just fully foreign to them? In either case, I feel like they'd want to understand it better, or at the very least, try and come up with a better relationship for how they feel about this strange power. Third on my list, and these next three are all unique takes on the traditional class. Specifically, first, the Trickery Domain Cleric. A lot of people play clerics and they're usually pretty straight-laced and do the right thing most of the time. This gives you a way to have an overarching good moral compass while still adhering to code of conduct outlined by your deity, but in a unique way where you're more of a trickster, prankster, or even maybe do some things a little more dark or sinister at the behest of your deity, or at least not contramanding direct teachings of your god. Circle of Spores Druid. Usually a Circle of Spores Druid is focused primarily on the flip side of nature compared to most druids. Most druids focus on life and growth and rebirth without realizing that part of that same cycle involves death, decay, and things going back into the earth. That's what Circle of Spores Druid focuses on, is the darker side of nature. You could have a druid that plays a lot darker than your typical druid in that they want to see life flourish, but recognize it has to end to do that. Third on that smaller list is Way of Mercy Monk. This is one of the few monk subclasses that I've found that grants the ability to heal, and so they walk a fine line between healing on one hand and doling out death on the other. And so it would be an interesting dichotomy where they would have to decide when it isn't appropriate to either heal or kill. And having an interesting code of conduct there could make for fun roleplay, and maybe even butt heads a little with people in the party or NPCs, and I think that would be phenomenal. Next on the list is the Oath of Glory Paladin. I recommend this one specifically for dynamic players that aren't wanting to be in the front seat and maybe have people that are less experienced with D&D or that are just generally more quiet or reserved. With the Oath of Glory Paladin, you're constantly inspiring your teammates to go do acts of heroism, right? You're constantly pushing to go do the next dangerous quest, to go and do something else. Almost like Vikings in that you want to die a glorious death so you can go to Valhalla. You want to die in combat. Similar here, I could see, where you're constantly pushing to do the next big glorious thing to build a name for yourself. Having that built into your character and their whole ideal structure is phenomenal and could be a great way of your dynamic players pulling all the rest of the table into fun adventures and plot hooks. Next, I had School of Graviturgy Wizard. Interestingly enough, they're just interested in understanding the underlying force of creation. And so that gives your character a built-in reason for why they're in the world, why they're interacting with the world, and what they want out of it. They want to understand things. And when you give a character that sort of understanding, I think it really builds out an easy way to roleplay and stay in line with what your character would do and wants. Before we get to the next one, I'm a huge proponent of warlocks. I love them. they're probably my favorite class to DM for, and certainly one of my favorite classes to play. I picked the Genie Patron because genies are less powerful and strong than other cosmic entities like the Great Old One and celestial or fiendish patrons that you may potentially have. And so having a patron that's more accessible allows you to do more. You can ask for boons for both yourself and the party so that you keep scaling appropriate for your DM while also giving you a fun way to grow and go on interesting quests. Side note, the Genie Patron literally gives you a little, generally a lamp, but it can be several different things that you have with you that's a constant way of communing with your patron. I think that offers a ton of potential, just in how you can interact with the higher being. Gods generally have too much going on, and so it may seem harder to get in touch with them. Second to last one before we wrap up here. Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. Ton of potential here with this class. In some way, they received power from the plane of order. And so, as a result of however that happened, they now have this power. But it begs the question, and ought to be either built into a backstory, or something the character's interested in finding out, what happened? What happened so that they got this power? How were they touched by the plane of order? For one. But it has so much potential if those questions are answered and it makes sense that having that power fits into the character's life and their motivations, it gives them a ton of roleplay potential. And then lastly, and this is, while simple, honestly one of my favorites. It's the Monster Slayer Conclave Ranger. It's a ranger who's devoted their whole life, in essence, to killing monsters. And you gotta ask why they do that. Is it for money? Is it a sense of civic duty, or is it personal? Regardless of the reason, you can build a backstory just around why they chose that profession. If it's personal, then they're gonna be deeply invested in rooting out monsters wherever they find them. If it's for money, they'll be interested so long as there's coin to be had. And if it's a sense of duty, that one's a little harder to roleplay in my opinion. They'd have to have a whole other code of ethics that they would adhere to as to when it would be appropriate so they aren't derailing a larger scale, potentially life-ending threat just because it may be human rather than monster. A ton of potential in all of these classes, but at the end of the day, I think what it boils down to in D&D with roleplay, make sure that the choices you make in character both match your backstory, your subclass, and the world. Oh, I think I hear my players knocking. We gotta get going. Thank you for popping behind the screen so I could show you what I thought were the top 10 subclasses for roleplay in D&D. Bye.